Some are saying that you're bipolar.
What does that mean?
You're on two ends of the spectrum.
What's the cure? Medicine? Make me like them? Not gonna happen. Shut up. Stop.
For years, it was the biggest show on television. A ratings juggernaut that defined an entire era of network comedy. But behind the scenes, a storm was brewing that would explode into one of the most public, bizarre, and captivating celebrity meltdowns in history. For 8 seasons, Charlie Sheen was the undisputed king of the sitcom world. He was the highest-paid actor on TV, living a life that seemed to perfectly mirror his on-screen alter ego, the hard-partying Charlie Harper. The party, it seemed.
Why mess with success that way?
You want to have fun having that type of success. I take things too far. It's who I am. I never said those words, did I? They treated me poorly, but the show's great.
And, until, of course, it did. In a volcanic eruption of wild headlines, network standoffs, and interviews that have become legendary. Now, after years of rumors, broken friendships, and public fallout, Charlie Sheen is finally telling his side of the story. What really went down on the set of 2.5 Men? What led to the infamous rants, the battle with the network, and the firing that sent shockwaves through Hollywood? The story is more complicated, more personal, and a lot more turbulent than you probably remember. At its peak, 2.5 Men wasn't just another TV show, it was a cultural event. It was the rock of CBS's Monday night lineup, a seemingly unstoppable force. And at the center of this hurricane of success was Charlie Sheen, an actor who had landed the role of a lifetime. His take on Charlie Harper, the jingle writer living his best life in a Malibu beach house, was so effortless and charismatic that audiences couldn't get enough. The line between the man and the character blurred, creating a magnetic pull that was both the show's greatest strength and, in the end, its biggest liability. By 2010, Sheen was the highest-paid actor on television, pulling in a staggering $1.8 million for every single episode. By all accounts, he was on top of the world. So how could a man who was, in his own words, winning, end up losing it all so spectacularly? The answer isn't in one single moment, but in a slow unraveling that started long before the cameras stopped rolling. To understand the collapse, you first have to appreciate just how massive the success was. 2.5 Men, created by sitcom titan Chuck Lorre, kicked off in 2003 and was a hit right out of the gate. It felt like a classic sitcom, but with a fresh, risque edge for its time. The chemistry between Sheen's party boy Charlie, Jon Cryer's neurotic and constantly broke Alan, and Angus T. Jones's deadpan kid Jake was pure lightning in a bottle. For over 170 episodes, this trio was the heart of a show that dominated TV. For many years, the set was a source of real pride and friendship. In a later interview, Sheen looked back on those early days with nostalgia, saying, "We knew what we had, and the value of taking the time to create it properly." He talked about the dedication of everyone, from the writers to the crew, all working to make something people genuinely loved. But even in those golden years, there were signs of trouble in Sheen's personal life. His messy 2005 divorce from Denise Richards brought a lot of unwanted tabloid heat. Then in December 2009, he was arrested for a domestic violence incident with his then-wife, Brooke Mueller. These events led to court-ordered rehab and anger management, slowly chipping away at the lovable bad boy image. Production on the show had to be paused multiple times to deal with Sheen's issues. In February 2010, filming stopped again so Sheen could enter another drug rehab program. His co-star, Jon Cryer, who had a close working relationship with Sheen for years, later talked about the gradual change he saw. For a long time, Cryer said, Sheen was a total pro on set, always great to everyone and nailing his lines. Cryer admitted that Sheen kept his struggles with addiction separate from his work, a pattern Cryer had seen before in Friends. But by that last season they worked together, the cracks were starting to show. Cryer described it as a small shift, something a casual viewer wouldn't even notice. He said Sheen's incredible comedic timing was suddenly off by microseconds, and that he just seemed a little brittle. It was a clear sign that the pressure and his off-screen life were starting to bleed into his work. Sheen himself later admitted how much personal turmoil he was dealing with. He reflected that people forget he went through 2 divorces and had 4 kids during the show's run, calling it kind of a lot. He knew he had a professional duty to park the rot before you come to work, a duty he later confessed he failed to uphold. He even reached a point, after the 7th season, where he felt he should quit. His gut was screaming at him that it was time to go, that he had nothing left to give the character and that staying on would end horribly, but, as he tells it, a massive new contract, pushed by his team, was just too much to turn down. He re-signed for 2 more seasons, locking in his record-breaking salary but also setting the stage for the public implosion his instincts had warned him about. The golden goose was still laying eggs, but the storm was no longer on the horizon, it was directly overhead. The beginning of the end kicked off in January 2011. Sheen checked into rehab for what was reportedly the 3rd time in a year, forcing the show's 8th season to shut down production indefinitely. CBS and Warner Brothers released statements of support, hoping their star would get the help he needed. For a minute, it seemed like another crisis had been avoided. But what happened next was something no one saw coming. Instead of a quiet recovery, Sheen launched a media tour that torched his career and his relationships. The first big explosion was a radio interview with Alex Jones. In a rambling, chaotic rant, Sheen unleashed on his boss, Chuck Lorre. He called Lorre a clown and a charlatan, and used a thinly veiled anti-Semitic slur by referring to Lorre by his Hebrew name, Chaim Levine. The comments were shocking, deeply personal, and crossed a line. He followed that up with an interview with TMZ, where he declared he violently hate Lorre, calling him a stupid little man. And that was just the start. In a series of interviews with major outlets like ABC News and NBC's Today Show, Sheen didn't appear like a man in crisis. He presented himself as a messianic figure, a self-proclaimed warlock with tiger blood and Adonis DNA. He created a whole new dictionary of catchphrases that went instantly viral. He wasn't sick, he was winning. He claimed he cured his addiction with my brain. When asked if he was bipolar, he shot back, I'm by winning. I win here and I win there. He called himself an F-18 and a total bitchin' rock star from Mars. And, most famously, he declared, I am on a drug. It's called Charlie Sheen. It's not available because if you try it you will die. His rants were a bizarre cocktail of ego and pure rage. He bragged about his drug use, claiming the last time he used he was banging 7-gram rocks and finishing them because that's how I roll. He dismissed any concern that he might die, saying, dying's for fools. It was a spectacle of self-destruction, broadcast live for the world to see. He then demanded a 50% raise, which would have pushed his salary from nearly $1.8 million an episode to around $2.7 million, arguing that he was underpaid. The industry's reaction was swift. In late February, after the verbal attacks on Lorre, CBS and Warner Brothers shut down production for the rest of the season. Hundreds of crew members were suddenly out of a job. The studio banned Sheen from the lot. For Chuck Lorre, who had dealt with difficult stars before, this was a painful and personal betrayal. Jon Cryer remembered that Lorre's main emotion wasn't anger, but sadness. He felt like he had lost a friend. Lorre later called the whole period dark and difficult, and humiliating. He started responding in his own way, through the vanity cards that flashed on screen for a second at the end of his shows, dropping cryptic hints about the chaos. Sheen, meanwhile, turned on his co-star. Just as Jon Cryer was preparing a public statement of support for his friend, he was told that Sheen had just called him a traitor, turncoat, and a troll. Cryer recalled thinking, okay, let's put a pin in that statement of support. The studio had seen enough. On March 7, 2011, CBS and Warner Brothers officially fired Charlie Sheen. In an 11-page letter to Sheen's lawyer, they laid out their case, citing his dangerously self-destructive conduct and stating that he appears to be very ill. The letter listed his erratic behavior on set, but the core legal reason for his firing was a moral turpitude clause in his contract. The lawyers argued that Sheen had committed felony offenses by publicly admitting to heavy drug use. Sheen's response to being fired was just as defiant. He released a statement saying, "This is very good news. It is a big day of gladness at the Sober Valley Lodge because now I can take all of the bazillions, and I never have to put on those silly shirts for as long as this warlock exists." The king was gone, but in his mind, the war was just getting started. He filed a $100 million wrongful termination lawsuit against Laurie and Warner Brothers, which was later settled out of court. The biggest sitcom in the world was now without its star, and Charlie Sheen was left to navigate the wreckage he had created. The speed of this public meltdown was unlike anything Hollywood had ever seen. If you're finding this story as wild as we are, and you want more deep dives into Hollywood's biggest moments, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. After being fired, Charlie Sheen didn't hide. He leaned right into the chaos. In April 2011, he launched a nationwide stage show called My Violent Torpedo of Truth/Defeat Is Not an Option. It was billed as a night of truth and mayhem, an attempt to cash in on his new infamy. It was a disaster. The opening night in Detroit was met with boos and walkouts as the crowd got tired of Sheen's rambling monologues. When they started chanting for a refund, Sheen shot back, "I already got your money, dude." The reviews were vicious, cementing the public view that Sheen had completely lost his grip. Meanwhile, Hollywood moved on. 2.5 Men returned for its 9th season by killing off Charlie Harper. He was replaced by Ashton Kutcher, playing an internet billionaire who buys Charlie's beach house. The show ran for 4 more seasons, finally ending in 2015. In a final, petty jab, the series finale revealed Charlie Harper was actually alive, only to have a body double get crushed by a falling piano. The camera then pulled back to show Chuck Lorre, who turned to the audience, said "winning," and was then also crushed by a piano. Sheen later called the finale immature and stupid. Sheen tried to pivot quickly, starring in the FX sitcom Anger Management. But as the years went by, the winning bravado started to fade, replaced by what sounded like real regret. The defiant warlock started to sound more like a man coming to terms with his own epic mistakes. In interviews, his whole tone changed. He admitted he probably should have begged for his job back and that the whole situation, which he made irreparable, was at one point fixable. Looking back on the whirlwind of 2011, he expressed a mix of confusion and remorse. Talking about the "tiger blood" and "winning" catchphrases, he saw the absurdity. "People have said to me, 'Hey, man, that was so cool,'" Sheen recounted. "My thought behind that is, oh, yeah, great. I'm so glad that I traded early retirement for a expletive, hashtag." He admitted there were 55 different ways to handle the situation, and he chose number 56. "The real lesson," he says, "is that it has to start with absolute ownership of my role in all of it." He confessed that, "Somewhere along the line, I decided that the rules no longer applied to me." The most surprising twist in this long story has been the mending of his relationship with Chuck Lorre. For years, it seemed impossible. But time, sobriety, and a willingness to forgive led to a remarkable reconciliation. The breakthrough came when Lorre was developing his new show, Bookie. He needed to cast a real Hollywood star to play a high-rolling client, and he thought of Sheen, remembering how much his old friend loved sports betting. Lorre admitted he was nervous to make the call, but as soon as they started talking, he said the old friendship just suddenly seemed to be there again. He called the reunion healing. Sheen felt the same way, calling their first conversation lovely. For their first table read together on Bookie, Lorre said, "The two of us hugged. It was closure. It was healing. And it was a big weight off my heart. Sheen's appearance on the show, where he plays a sober version of himself, is the ultimate proof that they've buried the hatchet. It's a team-up that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. What really happened on the set of 2.5 Men? The final confirmation from Charlie Sheen isn't some single, explosive secret. It's a slow, painful admission of his own fault. It was a perfect storm of massive fame, an unchecked ego, and the very real, destructive power of addiction. Sheen's struggles were the fuel, but his public war with Chuck Lorre was the match that lit the fire. He admits now that he effed everything up, and that the show could have gone on for years longer if not for his behavior. The story of Charlie Sheen's exit is a cautionary tale about the dizzying heights of fame and what happens when the line between a character and the actor playing him completely vanishes. His journey from a warlock with tiger blood to a man who expresses deep regret and is trying to fix broken relationships is maybe the most surprising chapter of all. The winning has finally stopped, replaced by a quiet, hard-won sobriety and the healing of old wounds. Now that you've heard the story with the benefit of hindsight, has your take on his exit from 2.5 Men changed? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more stories from behind the curtain of Hollywood, and check out another one of our videos right here.